Heinous Anus by Mark Arnold. Chapter 1. The Origin of the Curse. I was born into the kind of family that made social workers drink. Poor white trash isn't an insult in my case. It's an official designation. My parents had no money, no intelligence, and no prospects. If they'd ever really applied themselves, really worked hard, the best they could have hoped for was to die in their mid-40s of alcoholism, an overdose, or just forgetting to eat. They spent most of my early life fighting. Not your polite, simmering kind of marital spats. Full-volume, blood-vessel-popping brawls set permanently at an 11 on a 10-point scale. Every insult they knew, and a few I'm convinced they invented, got shouted across that single-wide trailer until the aluminum walls rang. One night, as they're screaming at each other over who drank the last beer, baby me is lying in my crib, working on my own problems. That's when it happened, my first big one. It wasn't just a fart, it was a weapon, a mustard gas blast in Pampers. Dad froze mid-yell, went pale, then clamped both hands over his mouth before doubling over the kitchen sink and barfing like he'd swallowed a blender. Mom screamed, high, panicked, and strangely betrayed, and staggered back, flailing at her hair. "It's in my hair! It's in my hair!" Just like that, the fighting stopped. Somewhere deep in my undeveloped baby brain, a knee circuit formed, fart to peace. If I was anxious, scared, upset, all I had to do was drop one and the world went quiet. I don't remember my first words, but I can tell you my first real thought. Well, that's useful. Chapter 2. Tom, the only witness. Kids knew to keep their distance from me. By grade school, it was standard policy, 10 feet minimum, like I was wrapped in barbed wire. They never said it outright, but the rule was there in the way they scattered whenever I entered the playground. I was my own quarantine zone. That didn't stop one kid. His name was Jimmy, a thick little bulldog of a boy who was already round by the 3rd grade. He had a head like a clenched fist and hands to match. Nobody really liked him, but nobody got in his way either. Until he came after me. I didn't do anything. That was the worst part. I was just standing near the slide, waiting for recess to end like usual, and he decided that was a personal insult. He stomped over, called me Gas Can Harry, and shoved me in the chest. I stumbled, caught myself, and saw the circle form. All the other kids closed in, hungry for something besides dodgeball, but not too close. 10 feet back, always 10 feet back. Jimmy wanted a show. He grabbed my shirt and yanked me down into the dirt. We rolled around, both of us swinging clumsy punches that mostly slapped skin or grazed the air. He was heavier. I was terrified. The crowd roared. That's when my body did what it always did under stress. I farted. Not a squeak, not a puff. This one was a ripper, a deep resonant blast that tore out of me with the authority of a tuba announcing the end of the world. Jimmy froze on top of me. His eyes went wide. Then his face crumpled like a paper bag. The sound wasn't the worst of it. The smell hit him like a freight train. He gagged once, twice, then opened his mouth and unloaded the contents of his entire short, fat life onto the playground. It came in stages, breakfast first, then last night's dinner, then snacks from the week before. By the end of it, I swear he was vomiting memories. The kids screamed and ran. Teachers came sprinting across the field. Jimmy kept heaving, eyes bulging, belly convulsing. I shoved him off me and got to my knees, shaking, covered in dirt and humiliation, but still technically on my feet, which made me, by playground rules, the winner. I didn't feel like a winner. My stomach was cramped, my lungs burned, and my ears rang with the sound of the other kids shrieking. Nobody would ever come near me again, not after this, except one. A hand appeared in front of my face, small but steady. I looked up. It was a boy I'd never spoken to before, skinny, pale, with hair that looked like it had been cut by lawn shears. He had no expression at all, like I hadn't just weaponized my digestive system in front of the entire school. "Need a hand?" he asked. I took it. He pulled me up without flinching, without wrinkling his nose. He brushed some dirt off my shoulder, shrugged, and said, "Don't worry about them. They'll get over it. I blinked at him. You didn't smell that? Nope. He tapped his nose. Doesn't work. He explained as we walked away from the chaos. When he was little, he'd shoved a whole handful of M&Ms up his nostrils just to see if he could fit them. He forgot one in there. It melted, got stuck, rotted, and the infection took out his sense of smell. The doctors said it was lucky it hadn't gone to his brain. It had burned out his sense of taste, too, like a 2-for-1 clearance sale. So I can't smell anything, and food's just texture now, he said. On the plus side, I can eat cafeteria fish sticks without gagging. He paused, looked at me, and grinned for the first time. You and me should hang out. You're radioactive. I'm immune. That was how I met Tom. The only kid who could stand being close to me. The only kid who didn't gag or vomit or run away. The only kid who thought maybe having a toxic ass was something like a superpower. That day he gave me something nobody else had ever offered. Not sympathy, not disgust, but a handshake. It was the start of a friendship, the start of my legend. Tom and I became inseparable after that day on the playground. Nobody else wanted to be near me, and Tom couldn't smell a thing, so he got all the benefits without the trauma. We'd sit together in the cafeteria, the two of us like pariahs at our own private banquet. I never had to worry about what my body might do around him, and he never had to explain why his lunch tray looked like a patchwork of textures instead of flavors. We were safe in each other's company. His backyard had a pup tent, the old canvas kind that smelled like mildew and trapped summer heat. It became our fortress. We spent whole weekends in there drinking Shasta, eating corn chips, and belching until our throats went raw. Tom could burp on command. He could burp the alphabet, slow and careful, each letter crisp as chalk on a blackboard. I thought it was the funniest thing I'd ever heard. I tried to do it too, but my burps fizzled out after a couple of vowels. Tom smirked at me, then tilted his head. Maybe you're aiming too high. You're not a burper, Harry. Maybe you're something else. Maybe you can fart the alphabet. It started as a joke, but something about it made me want to try. So I did. I strained until my stomach burned and my face turned red. The tent swelled with pressure. Then it came, a choppy A, a ragged B, a squeaky C. Tom was in tears by the time I rattled out a glorious G. I clutched my gut and shook my head. Why'd you stop? He asked. I was afraid I'd shit myself. That nearly killed him. He rolled around the floor of the tent, laughing so hard he hiccuped. When he calmed down, he dug into his pocket and pulled out something shiny, a lighter. Stole it from my brother, he whispered, like he was confessing to a crime. You ever heard of lighting your farts? I shook my head. You can do that? You can try, he said, but maybe not in here. Tent's flammable. We crawled out into the backyard. The air was still, heavy with summer humidity, the kind of day where every breath felt like drinking warm water. Tom positioned me like a scientist preparing for an experiment. Okay, he said, lie on your side. Point your ass away from the tent. Don't singe your shorts. And I did and let it rip. Tom flicked the lighter. The world exploded. A ball of fire shot out like the afterburner of a jet. The concussion wave shook the ground. I felt my eyebrows crisp. Tom was knocked flat, eyes wide, jaw hanging open. The blast launched the tent 10 feet in the air. It sailed like a parachute caught in a gale and wrapped itself around the upper branches of the General, the 300-year-old oak tree that stood at the edge of Tom's yard. The General was a town landmark. According to the plaque, George Washington himself had once sat under its shade to eat lunch on his way through. Now the father of our country's lunch tree was festooned with the smoking ruin of a Boy Scout pup tent. We stood there in stunned silence, both of us waiting for the fire department, the police, or the military to descend on us. Nothing happened. The neighborhood dogs barked. A car alarm went off 3 blocks away. Otherwise, stillness. Tom finally sat up and wiped the soot from his forehead. Holy shit, he whispered. You just declared war. I couldn't even argue. I felt like I'd just been split open from the inside. My stomach hurt, My ears rang and my nose was full of singed hair. But under all of it was a feeling I didn't understand until years later: power. That day was when I realized my curse wasn't just a nuisance. It wasn't just something to drive away my parents or make kids vomit on the playground. It was bigger than that. I had no control over it, no understanding of what it meant. All I knew was that I'd set the world on fire with nothing but a lighter and my ass. The general bore the scars for years, black streaks up its bark where the flames had licked. People in town whispered about vandals or maybe a lightning strike. Nobody ever suspected two kids in a backyard testing the boundaries of human digestion. Tom and I knew, though. Tom said it best. He looked at me with that grin of his, the grin that made him look like he'd just found buried treasure, and said, "Harry, we're going to go down in history." He was right. Not for the reasons he thought, but he was right.